Assalamu alaikum everyone. It's Miss Lala starting a very new chapter of your biology, that is organization of life. In this chapter, you will be learn about how living things arrange themselves from a simple cell to a most complex cell, from a simple structure to most complex gigantic structures. Here, let's have a look towards the objectives. By the end of the session, you will be able to know about cell and its discovery, cell theory, and organelles that is found inside the cell. Let's start by the cell. What actually a cell is? It is actually the basic fundamental unit of life. It means that all of the living organisms are made up of cell. Cell is actually the basic unit from which they develop, from which they organizes a multi-structure, from which they arise. How cell discovered? The very first scientist who actually helped in the discovery of cell was Galileo. Galileo was the scientist who first invented a magnifying glass. Afterwards, from magnifying glass, he invented a simple microscope. Afterwards, by using Galileo's microscope, Robert Hooke was the person who discovered cell. Robert Hooke actually combined different lenses in Galileo's microscope and called it a compound microscope. Galileo just gave us a simple microscope, but by the help of Robert Hooke, he actually advanced Galileo's microscope and named it a compound microscope. Robert Hooke, after the development of compound microscope or after the advancement of Galileo's microscope, Robert Hooke was actually the very first person who identified cell. After Robert Hooke, there were many more scientists who come across in the field of science and wanted to discover science, but all got failed except few. Robert Brown was the person who identified a spherical body inside the cell that had been discovered by Robert Hooke. He named that spherical body a nucleus. There were many more scientists who worked quite hard for the discovery of cell, and among them there was a famous scientist who was named as Dutrocheit. He actually taken plant cell material and boiled it in nitric acid. Later on, when undergo microscope, when he actually observed that plant material under microscope, he found various spherical small cells. He named it cella, a cella. Later on, there was a German scientist, Schleiden, who discovered plant cell, and another scientist, Schwann, who discovered animal cell. When Schleiden and Schwann discovered plant and animal cells respectively, from there we got a true difference between plant and animal cell. And from there, Robert Hooke clarified the fact that animal cell and plant cells are two different cells. Even though all of the living organisms are made up of cell, but cell varies in structure, shape and size. Cell is a very diverse living organism that has got its different shapes, cell and size. Then if we move towards cell theory, so there were three scientists who actually compiled up different points, and from the compilation of these points, we got a cell theory. According to Schleiden, Schwann and Virchow, all living things are composed of one or more cells. That means that it is the basic unit of life. Without the presence of cell, no life can exist. Cells are the organisms that performs different functions. All of the cells come only from existing cell. Point number 3 simply means that there must be some sort of parent cell exist from which new cells arises. Cell diversity. The word cell diversity simply means that the size and shapes of the cells varies. For example, the size and shape of the nervous cell will be quite different from the size and shapes of excretory system cells. The size and shape of digestive system cells will be definitely changes from the size and shape of reproductive system cell, or those cells that is found into the reproductive system. Let's have a look towards few examples. One of the most smallest cells is actually a bacterium cell, whereas one of the most longest cells is actually a giraffe cell, giraffe nervous cells. One of the most biggest cell is actually the ostrich egg. If we look at the shape of the cell, here have a look at the picture that few of the cells are cuboidal in shape, but few of the cells are spherical in shape. So if I say that shape and the size of the cell are different in different organs, so it must be true that the shape and the cell of the sizes, the shapes and the sizes of the cell varies accordingly. Let's have a look towards the function of the cell. Cell actually respond to different changes. It actually respond to different environmental stresses. It respond quickly to the external stimuli. Cell shows growth and development. It reproduces. It undergoes metabolic activities. It maintains homeostasis. If we have a look towards the organelles of the cell, so these are the organelles that is found in every cell, either of plant or animal. Have a look at the list. We have got cell membrane, nucleus, cell wall, cytoplasm, cytoskeleton, ribosomes, endoplasmic reticulum, Golgi apparatus, mitochondria, lysosomes, peroxisome, cilia and flagella, basal bodies, centrioles, vacuoles and plasters. These are the common organelles that is found either in animal cell or in plant cell. Let's discuss about cell membrane. This cell membrane is also known as plasma membrane. The cell membrane is actually the outer covering of any cell, either prokaryotes or eukaryotes. The cell membrane is actually made up of phospholipids and proteins. These phospholipids and proteins made up the external surface of the cell. Cell membrane actually helps in the exchange of material from inside to outside or from outside to inside. The cell membrane or plasma membrane, also known as semi-permeable membrane or selectively permeable membrane, because this plasma membrane actually helps the materials to go in or come out of the cell. If I'm saying materials, so the word material simply means I'm talking about ions, molecules, lipids, proteins, carbohydrates. Cell wall. This cell wall is present in plant cell only. Cell wall is actually rigid in structure. Rigid means it is actually stiff, it is actually hard. It is made up of cellulose and proteins and carbohydrates. Cell wall is absent